There is no doubt that China is an economic power. After all, it is the second largest economy in the world. But yesterday, on September 3rd in China, the whole world got to see China as a military power. That parade celebrating the 80th year of the victory over Japanese aggression was one that has wowed the world. The whole world has seen it. It was viewed in the Western Hemisphere, it was viewed in the Southern Hemisphere, it was viewed all over the world. China put up a show and a display that left no one in doubt to the fact that China is now the second leg in the multipolar world. This multipolar world is one where China has in its enclave, in its own corner, Russia and North Korea, and quite a lot of other countries. There were 20 other countries there that went to show solidarity with the Chinese as they celebrated this big event for which they have been planning for quite a while. It was one that showed that China has come of age, and China will not let the world do what it did to it for several years ago when it put China through 100 years of shame. Japan was one of the countries that put China through that period that they remember as 100 years of humiliation. Now China has shown that it can defend itself, it has strength, and because of that, no country, no matter what their hegemonic intentions are, can come and push China around. China showed the world and displayed to the world its new place as a military superpower, as well as being an economic superpower. Good day and welcome to my channel, Ebimo Amongo's Perspective on Global Affairs. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe. If you have any views or comments regarding the opinions I express in this video, please put them in the comment section. Do well to like and share. In the late 19th century, Japan went out on an expansionist quest. Imperial Japan had modernized, and Imperial Japan wanted to show the world that it also could also become a big, extensive empire outside the Japanese islands, and it started finding new territories to conquer. Japan defeated quite a lot of countries, but one of the countries it defeated quite early was China. In 1894, it fought the Chinese and defeated the Chinese and took over what is now modern-day Taiwan, among other territories it won from China. It also, ironically, defeated the Russian Empire then and took territories of the Russian Empire. Japan was quite an empire and a force within that region. They took territories in Korea and they colonized these places and enforced their own form of Japanese administration and terror on all these countries. They all have memories of the Japanese empire's activities in their country. But it was mainly in 1931 that the Japanese did something quite different. Expansionism needed that they needed resources and they needed materials, and they invaded in 1931 the part of China that is today known as then Manchuria. They had a false flag operation, used that as an excuse, and invaded that part of China, occupied it, installed a puppet leader there, the last Qing dynasty king, then Puyi. He was installed as the leader of that region. And 1937, the Japanese did something extraordinary now. Now they were really gung-ho. They wanted to take the whole of China, and they used another excuse again and launched a full-fledged war on China in 1937, and were quite running through the territories of China until they met some obstacles among Chinese resistance. They didn't expect that level of Chinese resistance because the Chinese weren't that sophisticated as they were. But China got a lot of help then. And 1937 was when China says that their own World War II started. That was when their own horror of Chinese terror started. They got a lot of help. They did get help from Soviet Union. They got help from America, and they got help from Britain and all the countries that had an interest in not seeing China be defeated. Besides, we should remember that the Western countries then controlled large swathes of China themselves, and they wouldn't want to see that part of China reduced and fall into the hands of the Japanese. So in 1937, the Chinese had a war. They had their involvement with these problems. The Japanese came into their territory and now was expanding, and it was a brutal war. Ultimately, before the war ended in 1945, the Chinese lost well over 20 million people. The atrocities of the Japanese are very well recorded. They try to deny most of it, but because of the kind of heavy hand they used to run their empire, there's collaborative evidence in all the other countries that they conquered, including Korea, Philippines, Vietnam, and all those places that they had an involvement in. So the Chinese were really celebrating. And if anybody was happy, it will be President Xi Jinping. President Xi Jinping was particularly happy, and it was a big show for him. It was a show that displayed it was a very big event. The Chinese president had showed how total and completely, as commander-in-chief of the Chinese military, he made the whole world know what kind of control he has over his military. It was a very impressive one. But China, as we know, has now become an economic powerhouse. Besides all this military hardware that they have there, we know that China is the second largest economy in the world. And besides, they are also the biggest economy in the world regarding purchasing power parity. They now have milestones that shock everybody. They produce more electricity than most of the whole of Europe combined. They produce electric vehicles. They produce robots. We saw them, and then they also produce a lot of drones. But those are not it. They are as a manufacturing powerhouse now, as the powerhouse of renewable energy. No doubt, nobody can doubt China's manufacturing prowess and competence, and it was out there to see. But it was their new display of military might. We see laser-guided weapons. We see hypersonic missiles. We see intercontinental missiles. They put out a display that frightened all the people in the West there. It was very, very obvious that this was a statement to all the countries in the West that have repeatedly come to pass through the Taiwan Strait in a claim that they were trying to do freedom of navigation. It will not be a safe thing again now if you have a conflict with the Chinese. They know. Now, this is the days of missiles. We saw that Iran had displayed clearly that this is the age and era that missiles are the predominant weapons that can do most of the discussions I'm talking for you in the warfare. Missiles and drones, and that's one place that the Chinese have invested very heavily. Eventually, also, we got to see them put up a display for their Air Force. They showed new tanks. They showed their nuclear arsenal. We can see at the background here now some of their big nuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles and warheads that can go very into so much distance, 15,000 kilometers and all. They also showed robot dogs. The machinery and the equipment that was on display was just telling. It was frightening. And it's a clear message. China, ironically, has not been a big war fighting country. Recently, the last time they fought a war was in 1979 when they fought a brief border clash with Vietnam. So most of their equipment is not proven, but we know that what's going on in Ukraine and the Russia-Ukraine war has a lot to do with the fact that drone warfare has changed that war. And almost all the drones on both sides being used by Ukrainians and the Russians are Chinese. They have Chinese components. They may be assembled now because the Chinese put a strong export controls. But people do get their drone parts into China into their countries, and there's a lot of artisanal and even industrial production using those parts that they procure from China. China is the preeminent producer of components for drones, and drone is now the main weapon system that is shaping the world. But yes, the Chinese shows us so much. They had laser weaponry there that is to shoot down not only missiles. I think those are they're anti-drone missiles weapons, and they probably are anti-missile weapons also. Quite a lot of head scratching for the Western military planners to be seeing. So China put up a big display there, but not to be done. Before the ceremony even started, President Trump did say that he made a comment regarding the event, and he put out a tweet where he made this comment. He said, the big question is to be answered is whether or not President Xi of China will mention the massive amount of support and blood that United States and America gave to China in order to help it secure the freedom from a very unfriendly foreign invader. Many Americans died in China's quest for victory and glory. I hope that they are rightfully honored and remembered for their bravery, sacrifice. May President Xi and the wonderful people of China have a great and lasting day of celebration. Please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, as you conspire against the United States of America, President Donald Trump. President Trump did watch that event. He has been one who is quite impressed with all this kind of military things, and he said he watched it. He made the world know that he watched this event when he was receiving the president of of Poland, who is visiting. President Trump stated that he watched it. He knew that the event was being put, the show was being put particularly for the Americans to watch. So he watched it, and this is what he said about it.
It was a beautiful ceremony. I thought it was very, very impressive. But I understood the reason they were doing it, and they were hoping I was watching, and I was watching. It was a beautiful ceremony. I thought it was very, very impressive.
You watched it. So the whole world watched it. The whole world was very wowed by the performance of the Chinese. It was a clear one. This is coming off the SCO meeting where China and Russia and even India and all the other countries, mainly the countries of Central Asia and the Eurasian bloc, some of them all came together to state that they were creating a new world order. That one new world order of governance. That's what Xi Jinping proposed. They also President Putin to also proposed that those days of bullying and all the kind of colonial and imperial behaviors should end. This is a new reality where the West cannot impose their will on the world again. What China has done in the past few years is that China has created an alternative for a lot of countries, not just in where they procure goods, but also how they trade. The Chinese have made sure that countries now use local currencies to trade with them because they are the preeminent trading partners of over 128 countries in the world. So when trading with these countries, it is very important that these countries have an ability to trade with the Chinese, and the Chinese are giving them the option of not using the American dollar, but using their local currencies in an agreed format. They also create a platform where trade can be facilitated using the chips. The chips here being the cross-border interbank payment systems. So this is a Chinese-created system that also facilitates. It's a messaging system, but it's also a system that shows instant transfer of funds. It's much more advanced than this. For a lot of countries who want access to technologies now, like if you want your satellites to be put in space, if you want to build your local phone networks, and then these days also if you want AI, where you get the more accessible forms of this kind of technologies apparently is in China. China has become not only the world's biggest manufacturing hub, not only the fact that they are the biggest supply, they control almost all the supply chains, but they now also have created pathways. Donald Trump and the American way has destabilized the world. Tariffs as is imposing in all the countries is creating a lot of upheaval. But through his actions, through the actions of President Xi Jinping and the Chinese, we are seeing a situation where now countries that are sanctioned, Iran, can get to sell their oil to the Chinese due to the support on the continued trading and continued international transactions going on between Russia and China. They don't feel the big brutality of the sanctions against them. Interestingly, China and Russia had one very big agreement recently. While it may be the one we may know is the Trans-Siberian Siberian power of Siberia through to agreement, a very big one. There was an agreement that relates to one thing that the Chinese president always like to talk, people-to-people interaction. The Chinese and the Russians will now not Russians will not have they can get into China visa free. Russia has a big tourist posse, that's the word. They come in large numbers. Last year, 6.7 million Russians visited Turkey, and 800,000 Russians visited China. That number can very easily swell. China has a lot of them, and there are many preeminent cities in China that will definitely impress the Russians. 800,000 can very easily grow to 1, 2, 3, or 4 million. So that's a crowd that the Chinese know. The Chinese don't worry much about it. Their relationship is improving and growing. Trust is growing between them. It may just be a relationship of convenience, but it is deepening and growing, and it is for building more roots. And this people-to-people interaction may be one of them. Even the president of President Putin the other day was saying his granddaughter now speaks Chinese. So the turn towards the east is not just by lip service. It is one that is almost a complete turn towards the east. It's a good time to turn towards the east anyway. And ultimately, maybe the Japanese will come to realize that the West is very far from them. All that is happening around the world is within the ASEAN region and the Southeast Asian region. China being the major node that is sparking development around that area. Already, China trades the most with its neighbors there. The ASEAN countries now constitute the largest trading partners of China, and that's a $1 trillion trade between these regions. In terms of individual countries that even had problems with China, Vietnam, and their trade is increasing, and the comprehensive partnership that they have is strengthening. They still have American allies there, and American allies will always have promoters of anti-China hate. That is strong in Taiwan. That is strong also in South Korea. But ultimately, increased trade between these two countries is waning and improving ties between these countries and undermining America's ability to use the NDE, the National Democratic Institute, to use the USA, to use all those institutions that the Americans are known to use to undermine countries, even to use the media. These days, access to China has become very clear and very common on YouTube. A lot of YouTubers who go to visit China because China rolled out a visa-free regime for now 45 countries, 48 at the last count. And all the people who go there go to Chongqing, go to Shanghai, go to cities all across China. They go to Guangdong, they see these things, they see the real China, and they're the ones who are reporting this real China on YouTube channels, on Telegram, on TikTok, and it is changing the impression the whole world has. But no doubt about it, yesterday's video performance was a spectacular one. And while Xi Jinping was having this great moment, it also came to the point where President Putin ultimately in the evening had a press conference, and there he said the Ukrainian war will either be settled by diplomatic means, but he doesn't see that happening because between the Europeans and the Ukrainians, they are far off from where the Russians want them to be. So it ultimately may end up being a war that will be settled by military means. Already we know the Europeans are ramping up. They've increased steadily. They believe that The strategy to defeat the Russians or to make the Russians very uncomfortable is by asymmetric means now. And there's a surge in drone technology. They are investing heavily in it. Drone technology, since they found out that nothing can be built within Ukraine that will not be within the reach of the Russian Iskander and second missiles and all the missile systems that the Russians have. They've started to build it. Today, Zelensky was in Denmark to meet with a great partner of the Ukrainians. They too have factories. Already we know of the Rheinmetall investment in Germany. We know of all the countries that are investing heavily in building capacity, mainly drones. Drones is now the way forward. Everybody knows what the drones can do now. And when Iran gave the Russians, gave them access or sold them the Sahid drones, nobody knew that those drones will have this kind of impact. You would think that it is a small technology of the Iranians, but look at what the Geopolitical drones have really done. They've changed, I mean, these high drones, they've changed the Russians have iterated, and now they are called Geopolitical, and now they are also called Geopolitical. And already yesterday, while this show was going on in China, the Russians sent a gentle batch of 500 drones to visit the Ukrainians, and that was escorted with 21 missiles. The Russians know what they are targeting. We don't know, but Zelensky put out a tweet that they were mainly civilian infrastructure, kindergarten buildings, and places where old people have their massage. If you listen to what Zelensky says, you will just think that the Russians are blind in choosing their targets whenever they say. And of course, we already know the proficiency of the Ukrainian defense system, air defense system. They shut down all of it. But usually the videos don't tend to support that statement, and the evidence usually is different. So this is where it is now. The Chinese have shown us that the world has changed. They have in their corner the Russians, they have in their corner the Koreans. The Koreans may not be as rich as them or as technologically as important as them, but they come with a big heart. The North Koreans showed that heart when they supported the Russians in the Kursk operation, and Kim Jong-un, when he was having a bilateral with Putin, also assured that anytime they're called on again, they will get into Russia. Already, Kim Jong-un was invited to visit Russia again by President Putin. President Putin and President Xi and President Modi and Kim Jong-un have created 1 week that has shown the world that the world has really changed. First in the SEO meeting, and now by this parade that has wowed the world and shocked the world and shown the world that China is leading the new world, new order, creating a new world order, one where the West cannot have their say all the time. Even if they have their say, they will not have their will. This is where I end my video for today. If you have any comments regarding the opinions I've expressed, please put them in the comment section. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe. Do well to like and share. Until I see you in my next video. Goodbye.